3 days after Liam proposed, he left me behind in a massive fire, choosing to save his ex-girlfriend instead. The flames were scorching and the thick smoke was making my head spin, but my mind was unusually clear. I even found myself laughing when he promised he would come right back for me. When he had asked me to marry him, I'd questioned him over and over. Liam, are you absolutely sure you want to marry me? Are you sure you want to spend the rest of your life with me? He had forcefully slid the ring onto my finger, looking me straight in the eyes and saying, Alara, I'm sure. He was always so certain. Certain that he wanted to marry me then, and just as certain that he needed to save her now. Perhaps people have these moments of profound clarity when they are close to death. As I felt my consciousness begin to fade, the single thought that occupied my mind was that if I could somehow go back 15 years, I would never tell my father about the boy in my class who was so kind to me, despite being poor and pitiful. If I hadn't, my father wouldn't have felt compelled to help him financially, tying him to me for so many years. When I was younger, I never could decipher the look in Liam's eyes. He treated me with a gentle demeanor, but his eyes were always cold, as if he were hiding a knife, ready to strike my heart at any given moment. I was never very good at reading people. My therapist said it was because I had witnessed my mother take her own life by jumping from a building when I was just a child. The event left a deep psychological scar that resulted in some emotional and social difficulties. I didn't fully understand the clinical explanations, but it was true that I disliked speaking with others. In elementary school, my classmates kept their distance, and my teachers described me as a cold and unapproachable child. This broke my father's heart. He started taking time off from his demanding work schedule to spend more time with me, but it didn't seem to make much of a difference. I was incredibly attached to him, but only to him. I remained indifferent to everyone else. This began to change when Liam transferred into my class in middle school. The first time I saw him, my only thought was that he was strikingly handsome, like a rare flower blooming on the edge of a cliff. Beautiful, but completely out of reach. He ended up being my desk mate, and he would actively start conversations with me, help me with my schoolwork, and offer me warm smiles. Years later, Liam would often joke that his greatest regret was smiling at me back then. I often wondered if he regretted it more when my father offered to support him financially, or when Chloe transferred to our school in our sophomore year of high school. Before Chloe arrived, our relationship had been relatively stable. Although Liam clearly resented my father's controlling methods, he was always gentle with me. That changed when Chloe joined our class. In stark contrast to my reserved nature, she was like a sunflower, vibrant, cheerful, and she effortlessly made friends with everyone, including her desk mate Liam. Initially, Liam was indifferent to her, but Chloe wasn't deterred. She would smile brightly and ask him questions, offering genuine praise like, "Liam, you're amazing," after he explained a difficult problem. Liam would turn his head away, but I could see his ears turn a faint shade of pink as he mumbled, "It's nothing." Sitting next to them, I would quietly put my own questions away. When I asked him for help, he was always impatient. If he could have had his way, we would have been complete strangers. His wish eventually came true thanks to a conversation I overheard. One day, Chloe finally asked him the question that was on everyone's mind. "Liam," she said in a gossipy tone, "are you really Alara's future husband?" It was an old rumor, one that started the day Liam accepted my father's financial assistance and had followed us ever since. Liam, who was usually quiet, frowned and answered without a moment's hesitation. "No." "And when they say you like Ilara, is that not true either?" Chloe pressed. Liam's reply was almost urgent. "No, that's impossible. Don't listen to their nonsense." I was pretending to be asleep at my desk next to them, but my body went rigid. I held my breath for a second, but my heart felt strangely calm, as if something I had long suspected was finally confirmed. The very next day, I went to my teacher and requested a seat change, using my grades as an excuse. I moved to sit next to the class monitor, who was a top student. When Liam heard the news, he seemed momentarily surprised but didn't ask me about it, so I didn't bother to offer an explanation. I may not have been good at reading people, but even I could see that Liam was falling for Chloe. Since that was the case, there was no reason for me to sit beside him every day, listening to their increasingly flirtatious conversations and feeling my own frustration grow. On the night of our high school graduation party, the noise became too much for me, so I stepped out to go to the restroom. On my way, I saw Liam pressing Chloe against a wall, kissing her with an intensity that took my breath away. By that time, my relationship with Liam had already cooled significantly. He had turned down my father's offer to pay for his college tuition, and at school, we acted like strangers. But in that moment, seeing them together, I truly understood that there was absolutely nothing left between us. What I didn't anticipate was Liam re entering my life after we graduated from college, when he started working at my father's company. The reason was straightforward. His mother was sick and needed a large sum of money for surgery. When my father brought him to see me, I was stunned into silence for a moment before managing to ask, "Where's Chloe?" From what I knew, they had been inseparable throughout college, deeply in love. Liam, with an unnerving calm, simply replied, "She went abroad." Then, with that familiar look in his eyes that had once smiled at me, he added, "We broke up a long time ago." I could never quite explain it, but that moment was seared into my memory. No matter how tender or affectionate he acted in the years that followed, I would always remember that look, cold and chilling, as if he were silently asking, "Alara, is this what you wanted?" I awoke to the memory of that cool gaze, greeted by a sterile white ceiling and the sharp, antiseptic smell of a hospital. I wasn't dead. I was still alive, and the realization brought a pang of disappointment. "Alara, you're awake." Liam was sitting by my bedside, his voice rough and hoarse. He looked exhausted with dark circles under his sunken eyes and a layer of stubble on his chin. When our eyes met, he managed a weak smile. "You've been asleep for 2 or 3 days. You're finally awake." I took a sip of water from the cup he held for me, gathering enough strength to speak. "Where's Chloe?" The water in the cup trembled. Liam's expression was a complicated mix of emotions. "Alara, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I shook my head, only then feeling the bandage wrapped around it. "It seems like nothing serious happened to her," I said with a faint smile. "Otherwise, you wouldn't be here watching over me." "Alara, don't say that." He reached out to take my hand, but his touch was cold, and I instinctively pulled away. He froze for a moment, then seemed to steel himself. "Alara, we're still getting married." "Really?" I looked down at the wrinkled bedsheet, hearing my own voice, calm and steady. "But what are we going to do, Liam? I don't want to marry you anymore." I rarely expressed my feelings so directly, but in that moment, I spoke my mind with absolute clarity, looking straight at Liam's pale, shocked face. "I can't stand the thought of spending the rest of my life with you." It was as if that rare flower on the cliff had finally succumbed to the wind and rain and fallen. Liam practically ran from the room, leaving behind only a single sentence. "I'll come back to see you in a few days." After he left, my father's secretary came in and quickly filled me in on what had happened. The fire was caused by an old, faulty electrical circuit. Liam had saved Chloe first, and I was rescued by a firefighter. That same firefighter had even shielded me with his own body when a light fixture fell, injuring his back in the process. He was also in the hospital. I asked for the firefighter's room number and waited for an opportunity to go see him. When I got there, I found his room was full of people, likely his colleagues, who were teasing him loudly. The atmosphere was lively. He was sitting up in bed, wrapped in bandages, laughing along with them. I recognized his face. During the fire, it was his voice that had told me not to be afraid. But seeing him now, he looked so young. The room was crowded, and my social anxiety flared up. I hesitated at the doorway for a while, deciding I should probably come back another time. Just as I was turning to leave, the door opened, and a few of the men inside spotted me. "Who are you looking for?" one of them asked. Then, realization seemed to dawn on him. "Oh, you're the girl Noah saved, right? You're here to see him? Come on in." I felt my body stiffen, wishing I could turn into a piece of wood. But the man inside, Noah, came over and shooed the others away. "Go on, get back to the station. You're scaring her." They left, still laughing, while he stood there in a hospital gown, half his chest exposed, scratching his head awkwardly. Are you all right?" I touched the bandage on my head, feeling a bit dazed. "I'm fine." A passing nurse kindly interjected, Patients shouldn't be wandering the halls. Even if you're dating, you need to take care of your health. As she walked away, she mumbled, one with a head injury, one with an abdomen injury, standing in a doorway talking about dating. Ridiculous. The man standing across from me turned red from his face all the way down to his collarbones. The firefighter who saved me was named Noah, and he was only 22, 3 years younger than me. He had a youthful face, and though his skin was tanned from the sun, I could tell he was naturally fair. I remembered how mature and calming his voice had been during the fire, but now, seeing the dimples that appeared when he smiled, it seemed like a completely different person. When I told him I wanted to thank him for saving my life, he became serious. No need, it's my job. I fiddled with my phone, thinking he probably didn't know that this hospital had a partnership with my dad's company, and that my father had already arranged for all his medical expenses to be covered. When I remained silent, his voice softened. Did I scare you? I'm sorry. My captain always says I'm too serious and that I might frighten people. Because I hate being indebted to anyone, and he seemed even more socially awkward than I was, I found the situation somewhat amusing. I held up my phone. Can we be friends? His face turned red again. Sure, where's my phone? We clumsily exchanged contact information, and by then, I had completely depleted my social energy for the day. I gave him a little wave. Let's get a meal together sometime. Without waiting for his reply, I hurried out of the room, missing his excited gasp and the pained yelp that followed when he rolled over in his bed and aggravated his back injury. I went back to my room, packed my things, and discharged myself without telling anyone except my father. As for Liam, who had promised to visit in a few days, I suggested to my dad that he should probably get a neurological exam instead. My injuries weren't severe, just a scratch on my forehead. My father had frantically called in a team of specialists, but their only conclusion was that I had been sleeping. My psychologist, Dr. Evans, explained that my 2-day slumber was likely a psychological response, a way of avoiding reality. He had been saying similar things for years, so I was used to it. The first thing I did when I got home was tell my father that I wanted to call off the engagement. He wasn't entirely surprised, but he still stroked my head gently. All right, if you don't want to, then we won't. Dad can take care of you forever. I knew how much he worried about me, and I clung to his arm, my eyes stinging. I'm sorry, Dad. What is there to be sorry for? That boy is the one who let you down. I only thought you liked him so much, and you two seem to get along well these past couple of years. I was just worried you'd be heartbroken. Thinking about it, I didn't feel as sad as I thought I would. Liam and I had reconnected and spent 2 years together. In that time, he had become much more attentive and caring, while I had grown more distant. So after we officially got together, he always seemed a bit anxious. I remember the day he asked me out. It was the first snow of the year, and we were standing under a street lamp. He carefully wrapped a scarf around my neck, his eyes soft. Alara, should we give this a try? I desperately wanted to ask him, why just a try? Why do you want to try with me? Are you still thinking about Chloe? But I never brought her up. After he and I reunited, her name became a forbidden topic. After that first day, she was never mentioned between us again. I remember that night, I didn't say a word, just gave a slight nod and thought to myself, let's give it another shot. Back then, I just wanted to find someone to settle down with. He was someone my father trusted, so I went along with it. And now, Liam had willingly let me go. He had given up on this chance. It didn't hurt nearly as much as it had on the night of my graduation party. Julian once told me, when you decide to be ruthless, no one can match you. When will you learn to be ruthless to others and kinder to yourself? His disappointed words still echoed in my ears. I blinked and closed the window. Down below on the street, Liam was standing there, staring up at my window like a statue. I had no idea how many cigarettes he had smoked. For the past few nights, the red glow at his fingertips never seemed to go out, much like his lingering presence. Since I had been discharged from the hospital, he had called me countless times and sent an endless stream of text messages. After I blocked his number, he started showing up at my house, as persistent as a piece of gum stuck to the bottom of my shoe. But he had always been the one who was most skilled at walking away. I had learned from my dad early on that once he started college, Liam began sending money to my family, likely to repay the support we had given him. even after he started working for my dad, he would set aside a portion of his salary to pay him back. With interest, he had almost repaid the entire amount. He was an expert at cutting ties. It was just a shame that this time, I had beaten him to it. My phone screen lit up with a series of messages. Assuming it was another one of Liam's new numbers, I was about to block it when I saw Julian's name. Miss me? Scrolling up, I saw his usual rambling messages. The short version was that he was back in the country, bored, had heard I was single again, and was planning to come bother me tomorrow. My temple throbbed. I replied with a single question mark. He quickly sent a voice message, his tone overly dramatic. Alara, my family is setting me up on more blind dates. You know how it is. Then another one followed. At least we were once potential marriage partners. You're not going to leave me hanging, are you? My head was aching, so I blocked him. The result of blocking him was that the next day he showed up directly at my front door. He casually draped an arm over Liam's shoulder and said teasingly, "You must be the idiot who gave up on Alara." I had been about to go out for a walk. Unfortunately, I witnessed Liam's entire face darken as Julian shot me a wink. Then, after several days of no contact, Noah suddenly sent me a message. He said he was free today and asked if we could get that meal. What was with today? Then I remembered my dad mentioning that Noah had been discharged from the hospital. I had asked him to find out when he might be free. Looking at the two men in front of my house, I quickly arranged a time and place with Noah. Turning to Julian, I said, "I have plans today, maybe next time." He gave me an understanding look, forcefully holding onto Liam, who was trying to get closer to me. He smiled slyly. "Since Alara is busy, why don't you and I have a chat, Liam?" He paused, his eyes glancing at me mischievously. After all, I was Alara's ex-fiancé. We have some common ground. Liam visibly hesitated and stopped struggling. He didn't know about Julian and was probably in shock. I left the mess for Julian to handle and went to meet Noah. Midway there, I received a text from Julian. "Handled for you." During the meal, I got another message, this time from Liam. "Alara, I'm just asking for one last meeting." Please. Where did he keep getting new numbers from? Annoyed, I deleted the message, blocked the number, and focused on listening to Noah's stories. Noah was dressed in casual clothes, looking fresh-faced and handsome. He had a bit of a silly smile and talked with animated gestures. That cat ended up on the air conditioner unit of a 15th floor apartment, scared half to death. When we tried to get it, it wouldn't budge. Once we got it inside, it scratched us up. He showed me the faint scars on his arm, looking amused. "The little guy's pretty strong. I had to get 4 rabies shots." I laughed, but he suddenly stopped talking and just stared at me, a blush creeping up his neck. "Has anyone ever told you that your smile is beautiful?" His straightforwardness caught me off guard. Sorry, he said quickly, his face turning even redder as he scratched his head in embarrassment. "I'm not very good at talking." "It's no problem," I said, finding his guileless nature incredibly charming. I couldn't stop smiling. "Thanks for the compliment." We were both socially awkward, but Noah had a natural innocence about him, so he filled the silences when I had nothing to say, which made things less uncomfortable. Having been trained by Julian during my college years, I had at least developed some basic social skills. I remembered him telling me earnestly, "In society, sometimes you just have to put on a facade." So I had invited Noah to a meal to express my gratitude. However, looking at him talking so excitedly across from me, I felt that with him, even pretending wasn't necessary to feel at ease. The meal passed quickly as we talked about a lot of things. By the end, Noah was telling me about how they had once rescued a kid whose head was stuck in a fence. I hadn't laughed that hard in a very long time. As we were leaving, he stood in front of me and asked tentatively, "Miss Alara, can I ask you out again?" The affection in his eyes was unmistakable, making my tired heart flutter for a moment. I instinctively replied, "Sure, and we're friends. You don't need to call me Miss Alara." He seemed surprised, then stammered, "All right, Alara, next time then." I thought of a new nickname for him and gave him a playful salute. He flashed a bright white smile and returned the salute. Just as Noah disappeared from view, Liam's car pulled up in front of me. So much for Julian saying he had handled it. What a liar. Liam's face was pale and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked completely worn out, nothing like the cool, composed teenager I remembered. Even his voice was hoarse, likely from smoking too much. Alara, who was that person you just had dinner with? Were you following me? I felt a wave of nausea. He didn't deny it, just gave a bitter smile. Ilara, we've known each other for so long. Can't you just give me a chance to talk? The cars behind us started honking. Feeling a bit wary, I sent a quick message to Julian to let him know what was happening and then got into the back seat of Liam's car. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror but didn't say anything. He drove to a manor in the countryside, surrounded by a sea of flowers. You always said you wanted to come here, but I was always too busy with work to bring you. Liam leaned against the car, his voice husky as he stared at the vast sunset. So this is compensation? I stood a meter away from him, indifferent to the beautiful scenery. I even took a moment to send my location to Julian. I want to make it up to you, but would you even accept it? He pulled out a cigarette, glanced at my expression, and then decided to just hold it between his fingers. When we were together, I often wondered, did you really love me? I met his gaze, but didn't feel like speaking. He didn't seem to expect an answer anyway. The guy you had dinner with, he's a firefighter, right? He seems like a decent person, but I don't think your dad will approve. Noah's feelings for me were so obvious that anyone could see them, but hearing Liam mention it made me feel disgusted. That's none of your business anymore, I said coldly. Our engagement is off. What about Julian? What's your relationship with him? His deep voice trembled as he twisted the unlit cigarette in his hand, as if my answer held the power to decide his fate. I never imagined Liam could be so jealous and suspicious. Are you accusing me or questioning me? I said, my eyes widening. I haven't even brought up your whole mess with Chloe, yet you have the audacity to ask about my past? Liam closed his eyes in pain, looking deeply unsettled. No, Alara, that's not what I meant. He swallowed hard. I'm just jealous. The last two words were barely a whisper, and after saying them, he laughed bitterly like a condemned man finding some twisted form of relief. He knows so much about you. Things that even I, your boyfriend for over a year, don't know. And that firefighter, since you reunited, have you ever smiled at me the way you smile at him? Night was falling, and the screeching calls of returning birds filled the sky, merging with his final question. Alara, did you ever love me? I think you did, he continued, lost in his own thoughts. You used to be so good to me, saying good morning every day, smiling gently, and sneaking snacks into my desk. Even when I ignored you, you were never angry. He wore a nostalgic smile, completely unaware that the past he cherished was my worst nightmare. How could I not have been angry? But he had never noticed my small frustrations. Back then, the only things he cared about were Chloe and his own fragile pride. Everyone thought I was using my family's wealth to morally blackmail Liam, standing in the way of his love for Chloe. They saw me as the villain. People perceived me as a lonely outcast, unlike the outgoing and popular Chloe. To be honest, I don't even want to remember those things anymore. As Julian once said, relationships that don't matter don't need to be maintained. This conversation was pointless if Liam was going to keep wallowing in the past, so I cut him off coldly. It's all in the past. Talking about it doesn't help anything. How could it not? His eyes were wide, not ready to let the subject go. I sighed and decided to give him the truth. Do you know why Chloe was with me that day? She heard about our engagement and flew back from abroad to find me. She told me your family didn't approve of your relationship, but you promised her that one day you'd have enough money to marry her. And how are you going to get that money? By marrying a rich woman and then ditching her once you had what you wanted. Thinking of Chloe's innocent-looking face that day, she had almost convinced me. Alara, I didn't want to see you get hurt, so I came to tell you the truth. But Liam did it for me. He didn't want to hurt you. Can you forgive him for the sake of our old school days? I just found it strange. Do you even know me, Chloe? She looked stunned. If I remember correctly, we never got along in high school. Were we close enough for you to call me Alara? It was a question I had kept to myself for years, and I had finally voiced it. Chloe had smiled awkwardly. Sorry, Alara, just a habit. I didn't want to get into a pointless argument, but she had other plans. She drugged my water. In my days, I heard her say, Alara, who do you think he'll choose, you or me? A meaningless question that got a meaningless answer. Meeting Noah for dinner was partly to thank him, but also because I had asked him to look into the fire. The official cause was old wiring, but a thorough investigation might reveal signs of tampering. Noah had hesitated, saying it might lead to a formal case. I told him to just follow the law. I had planned to tell Liam once I had the results, but I hadn't expected him to be so persistent. The sun had set completely, and the endless darkness felt suffocating. Alara, I'm with you, and it's definitely not for the money. I know. Knowing him for so long, I had some sense of his moral boundaries. He wouldn't do something like that. But when you first suggested we give it a shot, wasn't that because of money? Just like years ago, the reason our paths crossed was also because of money. Back then, I had agreed for a different reason, yearning for something beautiful and out of reach like the moon in the sky. But I eventually realized that the moon reflected in the water is not the same as the moon in the sky. Everything had turned out to be a pale imitation. Not even hatred remained. I was just weary of everything and everyone connected to him after that fire. My conversation with Liam ended when Julian arrived. After I got in the car, he mischievously flashed the headlights at Liam twice, then turned to me with a sigh. Coming all this way to pick you up, that's going to cost you. I chuckled looking out the window and couldn't help but remember the first time I met Julian. I was a freshman reporting to college, and he was the upperclassman assigned to pick me up. It was a scorching summer day. He was wearing the standard senior volunteer uniform, lazily leaning against a tree and holding a sign with my name on it. At the time, I had chosen not to attend the same university as Liam, opting instead for one far from home. My dad was worried, so he had arranged for a friend's son, who happened to be studying there, to help me get settled. Speaking of which, my dad had said, you two used to play together when you were little. Our families even joked about setting you up. But after they moved away, no one mentioned it again. I think that was probably before my mom passed away. I had forgotten so many things. So it was natural that I had forgotten him too. That childhood playmate now had a charming face and was swaggering around with a name tag, which made me feel uneasy. I turned down a different path to avoid him. But as if he had a sixth sense, he suddenly glanced in my direction and lazily walked over, blocking the sun with his frame. He smiled. Ilara, right? That was the only time he ever called me by my proper name. Afterward, he came up with a variety of nicknames, all of which were designed to annoy me. I didn't want too much interaction with him, but he used his father's request to take care of me as an excuse to constantly bother me. I was most afraid of people who acted overly familiar, like Chloe had, being equally friendly to everyone. But I later discovered that Julian was only like that with me, or rather with a very small circle of close friends. To most people, he was the aloof and handsome senior who rarely spoke. You used to say you wanted to marry me. By rounding up, you're practically my fiancé now, so of course it's different, he said, handing me a milk tea with a bold smile. I had no choice but to accept it. He gave, and I took. He nagged, and I listened. That was our relationship, and it was quite harmonious until my sophomore year. During that time, one of my roommates got deeply involved in campus loans. After borrowing money from everyone she knew and still being unable to cover her debts, she turned to me. We weren't particularly close, especially after I overheard her calling me pretentious. When she had said, who knows what kind of person she really is in private. Whatever semblance of friendship we had vanished. So, I directly refused her request, telling her I had no money. She tried to persuade me with kindness, but when that didn't work, she finally lost her temper. You wear and use all designer brands, yet you say you have no money? You won't even lend me a few thousand? Who are you trying to fool, acting all high and mighty? You're so selfish. No wonder you have no friends. Only that senior is willing to put up with you. I bet he doesn't know what other girls say about you behind your back. More unpleasant words followed, but I ignored her. Eventually, my other two roommates intervened and persuaded her to stop. A week later, she couldn't repay her debt and jumped from the top of the tallest academic building on campus. I didn't see it happen, but hearing others talk about it, I couldn't help but remember my mom on the rooftop, her eyes filled with tears. Alara, Mom can't go on. I was too young then to understand her pain or to hold onto her hand, a failure that haunted me for decades. Someone had once saved me, but their help had become an obligation tied to money, filled with resentment. So this time, I let go first, retreating back into my own world. The roommate's death made my nightmares more frequent and vivid, worsening my insomnia to the point where I had to get medication from the school clinic. That was how Julian found out about my past, about everything I had gone through after his family had moved away. He threw my milk tea into the trash, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me to a bench by the campus lake, saying he would show me the stars. The moon was bright that night, so the stars were few, but the mosquitoes were plentiful. I got bitten and lost my temper. For once, Julian seemed to feel guilty. He put his long-sleeved jacket over my shoulders and, when I wasn't looking, ruffled my hair. If you can't drink milk tea, why didn't you tell me? Good thing I didn't buy it for you often. I had always had sleep issues and couldn't tolerate caffeine. Milk tea and coffee always triggered my insomnia. I tilted my head to avoid his hand. You said it wasn't often, so I didn't bother mentioning it. In the moonlight, his expression grew serious. It concerns your health. That's not a bother. You're an adult. You should know how to take care of yourself. His tone wasn't harsh, but I suddenly felt overwhelmed with emotion and wanted to cry. Yet, despite the stinging in my eyes and nose, no tears came. I kept my head down, avoiding his gaze, and said softly, "It's not necessary." In the end, I've always harbored a bit of self-loathing, so I subconsciously wanted to punish my own body. Julian looked at me for a long time before sighing. "Don't think you're unimportant, okay? If you don't want to think about yourself, at least think about the people who care about you. Your dad wouldn't want to see you like this. What about you?" I thought of all the rumors about him pursuing me, people saying he was my lapdog and that I was just stringing him along. Once again, I blamed myself. "Why do you treat me so well? I don't believe it's just because of your dad's request." His eyes flickered and he smiled. "Do you believe in love?" I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. He laughed first. "Don't worry, I'm not confessing my love to you. I'm just giving you a reasonable explanation for my actions." I was a bit confused. "You love me?" He answered with a question. "What do you think love is?" I wrinkled my nose. "Don't ask me such philosophical questions." He chuckled lightly. "Then I'll give you my answer. I think true love is pure, which means it doesn't exist. At least, not for me. You once accidentally told me that there are no baseless acts of kindness in this world. I think you were right. Except for family, most gestures of goodwill come with a purpose. I'm no exception when it comes to you. My dad has always wanted to further cooperate with your dad's company, and given our family situations, a marriage alliance is the most logical choice. That's why I take such good care of you." He stated his true intentions so openly, without any pretense, and even winked at me afterward. "Besides, Alara, you're so pretty. I wouldn't be losing out anyway." I roughly understood what he meant. In his world, most relationships were performative, tied to mutual interests. Because of what happened with my mother, my dad had always protected me fiercely, keeping me away from that circle. So at first, I never considered this factor. But this purposeful and selfish interaction actually put me at ease. I could be certain that as long as our family's business didn't drastically change, he would always treat me well. Pure feelings might seem stable, but they are actually fragile. Just like Liam, who could easily take back his tenderness whenever he wanted. Julian, knowing about my past with Liam, patted my head and said, "Don't worry, he'll regret it." Back then, I thought he was just trying to comfort me. Maybe he really was. Neither of us expected the situation to turn out the way it did. "He has regretted it," Julian said, glancing at the rearview mirror. Liam's car was following us closely. "Probably," I said casually, glancing back. "But you said you handled it. Why is he still here?" The car sped up, and Julian's tone was relaxed. "I tried. I just didn't expect him to be this shameless. Knowing the immense harm he caused you, he still has the nerve to try to win you back. I feel ashamed for him by comparison. I was too tired to call him out on his little schemes. I just said softly, "Anyway, it doesn't matter anymore." Cutting ties was far more difficult than I had imagined. The night after I parted ways with Liam, I didn't sleep at all. Memories flooded my mind. Liam's vulnerable question at dusk, asking if I had ever loved him. Liam's conflicted voice amidst the roaring fire, telling me he'd come back for me. Those scenes overlapped, becoming blurry and fragmented, leaving only the image of a young Liam looking at Chloe with soft, passionate eyes, completely oblivious to me standing in the corner. I was ignored. I was abandoned. Just like years ago when my mom stood on the rooftop, her eyes filled with reluctance and tears, but still chose to leave me behind. My insomnia returned with a vengeance. I started avoiding people and lost my appetite, locking myself in my room. My dad was heartbroken, knocking helplessly on my door. "Alara, come out and see your dad, okay?" He told me the police had informed him that a case was being filed against Chloe for premeditated arson. He said Julian had visited several times wanting to see me. He said Liam had quit his job and that if I wanted, he could make it impossible for Liam to find work in this city. Finally, even he compromised. "If you really can't let him go, I won't stop you from getting back together, okay?" I opened the door. After 3 days of silence, my voice was hoarse. "No, I don't want him anymore." So I saw my therapist again. After looking at my assessment results, Dr. Evans frowned, prescribed a new set of medications, and then asked me to lie down on the couch and try to sleep for a while. "I can't sleep," I told him. His tone was gentle. "I know. That's why you need to try to sleep right now. We've failed with this before, primarily because your psychological defenses are very high. I'm just suggesting, would you like to try again?" Eventually, I fell asleep. He asked me, "What did you see?" I saw myself in a dark room. Mom was holding me on the bed, gripping me so tightly I couldn't break free. "Why did you want to leave?" "Because it was too dark. I couldn't see anything or hear anything. Only Mom's whimpers piercing my eardrums. But I didn't like hearing her cry. Her limbs, her tears, her whimpers. They all entangled me like thorny vines." "Really, nothing you could see?" "Actually, there was something. I tried to open my eyes wide, looking around, and I could barely make out a small point of light in the distance. It was a window. Outside, it was bright. A 15 or 16-year-old Liam was standing in the sunlight, waving at me. No light could come through. I was still steeped in darkness. And just when I wanted to put my hand on the window glass, Mom held me from behind. "Alara, Mom can't go on living." The window disappeared. It was a very unpleasant dream. After I woke up, Dr. Evans just patted my head. "You've made great progress already. Don't worry too much. Make sure to take your medication on time and come back for a checkup in a week." Before I left, I finally asked the question that had been on my mind for years. "Dr. Evans, was my mom sick back then?" Dr. Evans replied patiently, "Alara, based on what you've told me, it's very likely that your mother was ill. Depression, perhaps even some form of bipolar disorder. That would explain why she would occasionally hit me, punish me by not letting me eat, and lock me in a dark room. But she hurt herself the most, with the scars on her arms and her pale, haggard face. Sometimes I would catch her cutting her arms with a knife and wonder who was to blame. Was it my fault? Was that why Mom punished both me and herself?" Dr. Evans kept telling me that it wasn't my fault. "Don't take on other people's mistakes as your own, Alara. Your mom didn't choose to be that way. She just didn't get the treatment she needed in time, which led to those tragic results." I had one dream after another. In one, I broke free from my mom's embrace and opened the window. Liam stood in the sunlight, reaching out to me, but when I got close, he pushed me away with a look of disgust. "His leaving wasn't your fault either, Alara. Do you think he really hates you?" Dr. Evans asked. Suddenly, Liam was in his 20s, looking forlorn. "Alara, do you still love me?" I didn't know for sure. I just thought it was possible. "It's okay," Dr. Evans said. "Feelings are complicated. Don't doubt yourself because of them." "But I don't want to see him again," I said. "Why not?" "Because he makes me really sad." "Then we won't see him. Let's meet people who like you and make you happy, okay? Liam slowly disappeared. I saw my dad. He was holding my mom's urn, crying his heart out. He said he regretted being so busy with work, neglecting both mom and me. Then he gave me the best material conditions he could and spent a lot of time with me. Did that make you happy? Dr. Evans asked. No. Did it make you sad? Not really. I just kind of hated him. I hated him for coming back too late. Maybe mom wouldn't have jumped if he'd come home sooner. But I also love him. After all, he's my dad. Think again. Is there anyone else? I blinked hard and saw Julian, standing lazily under a tree behind my dad, wearing a careless smile. Light and shadow danced on his face. It took me nearly half a year to get to this point, to see Julian in my mind, and then I couldn't move forward anymore. Don't worry, Dr. Evans comforted, patting my hand. Saying goodbye to the past is difficult. You've done very well. The hypnosis session stopped. Dr. Evans suggested I go for a walk, change my environment, and remember to take my medication. So I planned a trip abroad. My dad wanted to come with me, but I refused. He hired a few bodyguards to protect me instead. No one knew about my trip except my dad. It wasn't until I was watching the northern lights in the Arctic that Julian found out and called me. So you went off to have fun without me? We hadn't seen each other much since my illness began because he was busy with his company and I was busy trying to get better. But he had appeared in my dreams, dappled in light and shadow. The northern lights were breathtaking. I breathed in the crisp, cold air and teased him. Julian, do you really need someone to take you out for fun? That's different, he laughed. I used to have all the time in the world. Now I'm sneaking breaks just to talk to you. I just laughed. Then he asked, where are you now? Watching the northern lights. I've never seen them, he said, pretending to sound pitiful. Send me a photo, will you? So I sent him pictures from each spot I visited, just like I did for my dad. The blue lagoon surrounded by volcanic rock, the gateway to the island under the sunset, and the blue ice cave that looked dreamlike as the light shifted. Sometimes I felt like I was melting into the world around me. Julian said, you belong in this world. I laughed. Where did you get that cheesy line to cheer me up? You got me, he chuckled. From a book called 99 Love Quotes for Your Girlfriend. You're the CEO and you're slacking off at work. He laughed lazily. I'm the boss. Who's going to stop me? True, no one can manage you. Not exactly, he said, dragging out the words. My wife can. I was standing in front of the Svartifoss waterfall, breathing in the fresh, moist air. When I heard that, I went silent for a moment, my eyes stinging. Julian, he gently replied, pretending to be dramatic. Another line from the book. Got you all emotional, huh? The waterfall created a rainbow in the mist. It felt like I was talking to myself when I said, I think I'm coming back to life. After a long pause, Julian's voice was still light. Looks like the view's amazing. You'd better take me next time. Sure thing. After months of wandering, I finally returned home just before the new year. Dad looked at me for a long time, his eyes red. You've lost so much weight and you got a tan, but it's good to have you back. It's just good to have you back. And Julian's first words when he saw me were, not bad, you came back alive. I gave him a light punch. After the new year, I started learning how to manage the company alongside my dad. Due to the medication, my memory and reaction time weren't what they used to be. Learning was difficult, but I felt a sense of fulfillment I had never experienced before. The nightmares of my mom and Liam rarely visited me anymore. I couldn't completely escape the darkness, nor could I fully embrace pure light. So, I stood at the edge of both, facing Julian. He fully supported my decision to join the company and helped me immensely. When I offered to thank him, he just laughed. Alara, just give yourself to me. I bit my lip. But he gently interrupted. It's okay. Businessmen need to have patience. When he said that, his lips curled into a mischievous smile, his eyes like those of a cunning fox. Patience is definitely a crucial skill, especially when you're dealing with all kinds of people. After a party, Julian always seemed perfectly fine. while I felt completely drained. I couldn't help but ask him, "How come you're never tired?" He didn't joke around like he usually did. "I've been tagging along with my dad to these events since I was in high school," he said. "Over time, you just get used to it." I found a seat in a quiet corner, and Julian sat down next to me, casually picking up my sore leg and giving it a massage. In high school, my dad was considerate of my studies, so it was only once every month or two. He continued, but by the time I was in college, he took me to every single event. "Remember how you used to joke about how I'd disappear all the time? When I wasn't at school, I was here, socializing and networking. When you're born into this world, there's no escaping it. The resources you enjoy from birth come with responsibilities. So, in college, I was actually pretty envious of you for not having to inherit a family business." The mood had gotten a bit heavy, so he changed the topic lightly. "Well, now you're in this mess too, so at least I'm not suffering alone." Julian seemed a bit lonely that night. I felt an urge to pat his head, and so I did. When my hand touched his soft hair, we both froze, our eyes locking. I awkwardly cleared my throat first. He chuckled, patted my head in return, and said, "Let's get you home." As we were stepping out, I saw Liam leaning against a wall looking quite drunk. I had heard that he resigned and started his own business, leveraging the connections he had made at my dad's company. He seemed to be doing well, but in the early stages of a business, there's always a lot of socializing to do, a lot of whining and dining to secure investments. I couldn't picture him doing that, and seeing him now, I felt a pang of melancholy. His back wasn't as straight as it used to be, and his once sharp eyes looked tired. "Want to go say hi?" Julian asked softly from behind me, draping my coat over my shoulders. Just then, a girl rushed out of a nearby room, jacket in hand, and hurried over to help Liam. "Liam!" I shook my head. "Let's go." As we passed by, I thought I heard a faint Ilara, but I kept walking. I saw Noah again in the spring. I had some rare free time and decided to visit an art exhibit. When it was over, I ran into him waiting outside the restroom. He looked more mature, wearing a matching hoodie and jeans and holding a cup of bubble tea. "Miss Ilara?" he said, recognizing me first with a hint of surprise. "Hello, Noah." After our dinner, he had contacted me a few times, but I was sick and hadn't responded. After that, we lost touch. A girl came out of the restroom and linked her arm with Noah's, looking at me curiously. She was wearing a matching hoodie, the same one as Noah's. He handed her the bubble tea and hesitantly introduced me. "This is Miss Ilara, an old friend." The girl's eyes showed a hint of vigilance as she greeted me, then she whined to Noah about wanting takoyaki from a nearby shop. The shop was popular and always had long lines. Noah told her to wait at some seats near the exhibit entrance while he ran off to get the food. Watching him leave, I smiled at the girl. "Got something you want to say to me?" She seemed startled by my directness, blushing a little. "Are you Ilara?" I chuckled. "Has Noah mentioned me?" She nodded, looking a bit uneasy. "Yes, a few times." "Sorry, I might be overreacting." "Don't worry, I've only met your boyfriend twice. He saved me from a fire. I thanked him with a meal, and that was that. It was over a year ago." She sighed in relief, but then bit her lip. "Sorry, I was just worried. Noah was quite down for a while." Shaking my head, I interrupted, "It's okay. It's a normal reaction. Don't blame yourself." It took me years to learn that simple lesson. We chatted until Noah returned. She told me how Noah had saved her when she was about to commit suicide, talking her down from a rooftop for over an hour. "Ilara, why did you stop talking to Noah?" she asked, growing more comfortable and curious. I just smiled. I had some personal issues to deal with. Seeing Noah returning, I stood up. "Your boyfriend's back. I'll be going now." It had just been a fleeting crush, probably heightened by the intense circumstances of our meeting. Our worlds simply didn't align. Back in my office, thinking about that fire, it felt like a lifetime ago. But lately, Liam had been appearing more often, always keeping his distance. Like Dr. Evans had said, saying goodbye to the past isn't easy. I would still cry for no reason, find myself zoning out on the company rooftop, or feel detached from reality because of the medication. Julian was the first to find me on the rooftop, his worried voice calling my name, snapping me back to the present. Seeing my tears, all his frustration melted into a sigh. If you really don't want to see him, let me help you, okay? I shook my head. It's fine. I'm already getting better, bit by bit. I've forgotten a lot of things, especially memories involving Liam. Every accidental encounter with him makes those memories fade a little more. Sometimes when our eyes meet unexpectedly, I wonder why I was ever so devoted to him. Other times when I look at him, I think I see my mom standing behind him, smiling gently at me. I cry less frequently. I have fewer nightmares. Although Liam brings back some unpleasant feelings, I know I'm gradually recovering. But Julian is still worried. He uses the excuse that our companies are close to each other to pick me up from work every day. I can't seem to refuse, so I just agree. One rainy day, about a year and a half later, Julian said he'd be late picking me up, so I waited at the office entrance. Liam walked up at that moment and offered me an umbrella. I didn't feel anything. I just took a step back and said, "No thanks." Liam's Adam's apple bobbed. "You still blame me, don't you?" Julian's car arrived just then, honking the horn. I waved at him and quickly said to Liam, "Someone's here to pick me up." That night, Julian was driving fast. I couldn't help but pat his arm. "Do you want to get a ticket?" He didn't speak, just slowly decelerated. I could tell he was in a bad mood, and it couldn't have just been because of Liam's umbrella. There had to be something more. "What's wrong?" After a while, he finally spoke. "Just business stuff. Liam's company is growing fast, and they're becoming a competitor. Lately, they've been targeting us with some small moves. I won't suffer a loss." He paused, glancing at me. "But I'm still pissed." I sighed. I have nothing to do with him anymore. He rarely pressed me so hard. "Does it still make you sad to see him?" "No," I said with a genuine smile, feeling at ease. "I've forgotten many things, and I don't plan on remembering them." At a red light, he reached over, pinched my cheek, and smiled. "You've got to forget what you need to forget." After that day, Liam started sending flowers to my office. They were all flowers I had once mentioned liking. Sometimes there were also little trinkets I had once talked about. But they didn't affect me anymore. I told the receptionist to just throw them out. Julian saw them once and asked, "You don't like any of these?" "Not really. I used to say I liked them to seem cute." I wanted to appear less isolated and different, to be more like Chloe, friendly and outgoing. In all my relationships after that, I felt compelled to do what couples are supposed to do, as if that would somehow fix my regrets from when I was younger. But in the end, if you don't like something, you just don't, no matter how many years pass. Julian laughed. "So, what do you like? Your birthday's coming up. I need to prepare." I stared at him for a while and then laughed. "How about you give yourself to me?" Richard was momentarily stunned. "What did you say?" I found his reaction amusing and intentionally said, "Nothing." He recovered quickly and persistently teased, "I heard you, Alara. Don't go back on your word." I just laughed and told him to stop bothering me at work. Later, I recorded that part of our conversation and sent it to a number that had been harassing me for days. Julian helped me have an unforgettable 29th birthday. He really did jump out of a huge gift box, shouting, "Happy birthday, Alara!" It made the moment incredibly awkward, even though it was just the two of us. I laughed, feeling exasperated, and covered my face. "Julian, let's just pretend we're strangers." He grabbed my hand and laughed. "No way. I still need to give myself to you." "I know what you mean by that," he interrupted, rubbing my head. "I don't mind if you use me. In fact, I hope you use me more. Giving myself to you is also somewhat selfish." "Selfish? Because of my family's wealth? Or something else?" I looked into his eyes and suddenly didn't want to ask. If it were just about a marriage alliance, he had plenty of other options. There was no need to focus solely on me. But Julian, I may never be able to love anyone again. My emotions seemed to have shut down after that fire, making it hard for me to feel that heart-pounding, all-consuming kind of love. Dr. Evans said the medication had side effects, one of which was a lowering of my emotional sensitivity. I wouldn't feel extreme sadness or extreme joy. And I would need to continue taking this medication for another 3 to 4 years, and Julian hugged me gently. "It's okay. I love you, and that's enough." Julian is the biggest liar. He said he didn't believe in pure love, yet now he claims to love me. After a long moment, I hugged him back. Julian, the only thing I'm sure of is that I don't dislike you, and I probably quite like you. Reliance had become a habit. He had accompanied me through so many difficult times, a shining presence in the river of my memories. He smiled proudly. That's my honor. Under his triumphant gaze, I put on the ring. The night our engagement was announced, a strange number called me. Somehow, I instinctively knew it was Liam. The screen lit up, then went dark, then lit up again a few seconds later. It became the only source of light in the dark room. After a while, I answered. His hoarse voice came through the line. Elara? I couldn't quite describe the tone of his voice. Wistful, nostalgic, guilty. It made me remember the first time I met him. He was a cool boy with a warm smile and gentle eyes, standing in the sunlight. Don't hang up yet, he pleaded. Let me just talk to you. He must have been drinking. He had an old problem with headaches after drinking too much. Okay, I responded softly. On the other end of the phone, there was a long sigh and a past I never knew unfolded. Before he met me, Liam's family had only one source of income, his mother. Even though she was sick, she had to work several jobs a day to support his education. When he got to middle school, he tried to work part-time secretly but was rejected because he was underage. Then, he met me and my father. My dad laid out the pros and cons for him. If he worked part-time, it would take up a lot of his time and cause his grades to suffer. But if he accepted my dad's help, he just needed to take care of me at school, and he wouldn't have to worry about anything else. You're too young to see the big picture. How much can you possibly make with a part-time job? Studying is your only way out. It made sense, but Liam always felt like he was selling himself. The titles people gave him, the poor boy kept by the rich girl, crushed his pride. He was powerless and could only vent his frustration on me. I never hated you, he said. In the end, I just hated my own incompetence. Even though he worked himself to the bone with part-time jobs during college, he still couldn't afford his mother's surgery. When he saw me again, he had resigned himself to his fate. Some people are just born at the finish line. No matter how hard I try, I can never reach it. Elara, I really did fall in love with you during those 2 years. He seemed to be crying, his voice choked with emotion. I miss you so much. If I had chosen to save you back then, would things be different now? Elara, I found the ring I gave you in the trash. It was getting late, so I finally spoke. Liam, go have some honey water and then get some sleep. He still didn't hang up and asked softly, Are you really going to marry him? I answered his question, then ended the call. I didn't expect that the next day, Liam would go and start a fight with Julian. By the time I got there, security had already separated them. Without thinking, I rushed straight to Julian's side, relieved to see he had only been punched in the lip. But I couldn't hold back my anger and yelled at Liam, Liam, are you out of your mind? In reality, Liam looked much worse, with a bruised face and tattered clothes. When I yelled at him, he looked like a part of him had died inside. Feeling I might have gone too far, I paused, then heard Julian sharply inhale. I noticed his right hand was scraped up and bleeding badly. It looked terrifying. The sight of blood sent a jolt of panic through me. We're going to the hospital. Richard leaned on me, trying to soothe me. It's okay, I still have work to do. I rolled my eyes at him. The company will fall apart without you for one day? He chuckled lowly, surrendering under my angry glare. Let's go to my office. I have a first aid kit. I had security take Liam away and then went with Julian to his office. While I was treating his wounds, my hands were shaking so badly that I was a bit heavy-handed. I immediately apologized, but he just rubbed my head with his uninjured left hand. Why are you so tense? I'm not dying. He didn't know how terrified I was of blood, especially from hands and arms. It brought back all my childhood nightmares. When I stayed silent for a long time, Julian realized something was wrong. He moved closer. Elara, it's really all right. If you're still worried, we can go to the hospital for a full checkup. My voice was shaking. Why did you fight? It's not uncommon for males to fight over a mate. Don't cry. His reminder made me realize I was crying. I wiped away my tears and glared at him. No more fighting, No more getting hurt and no more bleeding like this. He was already flustered by my tears and moved closer, pressing his forehead to mine. Okay, my bad. I made you worry. We were just engaged, and he was already this clingy. It annoyed me. Stay away from me. Got it. He quickly kissed my forehead and then stepped back about 20 centimeters, smiling in a way that just begged for a beating. That's compensation. Feeling guilty, I took the initiative to find Liam afterward. It's really over between us. I hope you don't bother me or anyone around me anymore. His current state was hard to describe. It was as if he had aged 10 years overnight. So you're still blaming me? No. I tried hard to explain. What I mean is, we're strangers now. So, I don't love you, and I don't blame you. I just want you to stay away from my life. Liam's expression remained stubborn and frightening, and I had to speak more sternly. Mr. Evans, if you continue to harass me or my family, I will call the police. Don't make me hate you, Liam. After a long pause, he finally said softly, All right. Outside the coffee shop, Julian was already waving, signaling that it was time to go home. So I said my final goodbye to Liam and walked towards Julian. These days, because Julian's right hand was injured and he couldn't drive, I took the wheel. He sat in the passenger seat, and his good left hand would occasionally cause trouble, forcing me to threaten him. Move again and I'll hire a driver. I used to have a driver, but Julian had fired him. He let go of my arm and said, half joking and half serious, Alara, I'm really glad you ran to me first that day. During our engagement, he had never said, I'm glad you're marrying me. But now, over such a small thing, he was thrilled. I chose to ignore his petty remarks. That night, he guilt-tripped me into staying at his place to cook for him. When he kissed me until I was breathless, he asked again, Alara, why did you run to me first? I stayed silent. He just kissed me again. After we got married, he asked the same question on various intimate nights. I finally gave him an answer on our first anniversary. There's no choice involved. There's no order. You are the only answer. Even when my emotional functions were compromised, my instincts gave me the answer at that moment. There were no other options. You are the only answer.